take over. But I'm here with Ignatius Sunko, who has experience of what's normally transpired here at the National Assembly. He will chip more on the expectations and then what we are expecting at this moment. So Ignatius, let's interact with this presentation that is going to come up in a very short moment. Can you tell us your experience with regards to the budget presentation?
Okay, well, Rabi, this is one of the beauties of democracy. And a visit of the president of a democratic nation is a big deal. Yeah. And today's own coming to present budget makes it a bigger deal. Now, you see, the two arms of government that are mostly involved in budget process is the executive and the legislature. And today is the day that the President Ahmed Bola Tinubu, is going to present his first national budget, not as a chief executive, but as the president. The president is used to presenting budgets. Whenever he's been governor, so he has presented budgets to the legislature. So today is not his first time. So he has had experience. But the only difference for today, that of today, is that the first time he's presenting as the president. Now, the process is quite seamless. It's scientific. The members of the Senate will have to meet briefly. They will adjourn. While the House of Representatives are also sitting here at the moment, they will adjourn as well too. Once they have a signal that Mr. President is arriving the precinct of the National Assembly, and they will all converge here in the chamber of the House of Representatives. Now, previously, it used to be inside the chamber. Now, why it's always in the House of Representatives is not for any constitutional differences. It's because, ordinarily, because members of the House of Representatives are more in numbers. So their chambers, the chamber of the House of Representatives is bigger and larger, so it could accommodate both the Senate and House of Representatives. Now, because of the chamber is at the moment is not okay for sitting, they have to come and meet here. Now, when they come, usually they will start. Now, the President of the Senate presides over any joint session of the National Assembly. So we expect as soon as they enter here, the Senate President will be seated, the Speaker will be seated, and then the Senate President to make opening speech if the President arrives.
All right. Like you rightly said, this is the first time the President is having an interface with the legislature as official engagement. Before now, 2 days ago, the Federal Executive Council approved the estimate of 27.5 trillion naira for the budget of 2024. Can you tell us the issue of synergy between the two arms of government? What do you expect, in the speedy passage of, the bill later after the presentation?
Okay, well, you see, from the beginning when President Ahmed Bola Tinubu took over, there was a clear cut line that has going to be constant engagement between the executive and the legislature, and that is at the base of parliamentary activities. Now, this budget, we see, if you ask me, it's quite conservative. If you take a look at the fluctuation of foreign exchange within the few periods that the president came in, we found out that yes, this figure is quite conservative. Yeah. And then we expect that the amendment of the parameters of the dollars exchange rates and the crude oil that are so far, we expect that will show up revenue. You see, the major issue of budget process is not just the formation. After formation, enactment and implementation. And then what we expect that by the parameters that the Federal Executive Council has approved, taking a look at it, we expect that this will show up revenue. And then by showing up revenue, it will definitely reduce the number of borrowing we expect that will come up. But now, don't forget that the Parliament has what we call power of the purse. That is what they have as right. So they have the right to amend that constitution. There are parliaments that don't have rights to amend, but Nigerian constitution is like that of the United States. Such parliament will call them the writing legislature, who can amend so they can increase. So whatever the president is presenting today, they can increase or decrease it.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Ignatius, for this insight. Back to you in the studio, Benny, for continuation of the program.
Okay, thank you, Rabi, for that contribution. At this time, we're going to come back to you shortly to get to have details of what will be taking place there when Mr. President actually comes in. And for now, Nigeria's bicameral legislature is set to host President Bola Ahmed Tinubu for the first time to present the proposed 2024 budget. National Assembly correspondent Lami Ali reports.
Since Nigeria's return to democracy in 1999, various administrations have, in line with constitutional provisions, laid before the two chambers of the National Assembly the annual budget proposal, otherwise called the Appropriation Bill, before a joint session for consideration and approval. The Constitution outlines the principles and legal framework for budget management in Nigeria. The legal framework for the legislature and executive arms of government in the budget include the 1999 Constitution, the Public Procurement Act, the Fiscal Responsibility Act, the Finance Act, among others. The budget presentation date to the National Assembly by the executive arm from 1999 to date consistently hovered between October and December. This cannot be said for the budget figure, which over the years witnessed astronomical increase from 299 billion in 1999, rising to 1.06 trillion in 2002 and jumped to two-digit trillion in 2020, amounting to 10.33 trillion naira. Although the 10th National Assembly has approved two budgets as requested under the Tinubu administration, which are the amended 2022 supplementary budget and the 2023 supplementary budgets, it will for the first time this Wednesday host President Bola Tinubu as he makes his first formal visit to the National Assembly to lay before Nigeria's bicameral legislature the proposed 27.5 trillion naira money bill for consideration and approval.
May I crave the indulgence of the Senate to grant me the slot of 1100 hours on Wednesday, the 29th day of November 2023, to formally present the 2024 appropriation bill to a joint session of the National Assembly. Please accept, distinguished Senate President and distinguished senators, the assurances of my highest regards. Signed, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu.
This House do admit into the chambers the President and Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of the Federal Republic of Nigeria and other dignitaries on Wednesday, 29th November 2023 to receive the 2024 budget estimate.
Those in support of this motion should say aye. Those against should say nay. The ayes have it.
Lami Ali.
Okay. Dr. Kengo, as you were saying earlier on, yes, this is plan document, the 2024 proposed budget. We've had several ones from the previous administration. We're trying to say how far has the 2023 budget performed, dovetailing into the 2023 supplementary budget that was passed. That's talking about as President Bola Ahmed Tinubu came into power, rolling out his 8-point priority areas for the Renewed Hope agenda in order to ensure implementation. Yes, the supplementary budget came in, but before then, we had the 2023 budget, which was running. What's your assessment of the performance so far?
Fine. Two ways you assess a budget. You assess it by direct impact on the citizenry. You also assess it by, the performance of the MDAs. Okay, and that performance will now amount to the outputs of the MDAs. If I were to score the 2023 budget provisions or performance against the utterances of the new administration, then it might not be very high vis-a-vis, outputs. Because when the president came in, he complained about so many things, not done right. Okay, and then you saw a lot of MDAs, heads of MDAs, especially, the national banker, which is the governor of the central bank, being called to answer a lot of questions. And he's not even out of the hooks. You saw that the administration also talked about a lot of funds that were misappropriated. Just 2 days ago, the Minister of Aviation, was on air talking about, a lot of also the misadventures that we had gotten into with the aviation sector. A lot of things were left undone. But I think this is a fresh start, President Tinubu, in presenting this budget. You will find out that, yes, there seems to be not a disalignment vis-a-vis disagreement, okay, but there seems to be a disalignment vis-a-vis focus. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
So
yes.
It's not as if they're continuing with the same trajectory. Yes, there are the traditional, things that you must be able to do in a budget, statutory transfer, paying, supporting your debt profile or servicing your debts and all that. All that is captured, right? Transfers to security, this, that. But you find, like I said to you in the beginning, that you now see that there's a lot more focus on social security. All right, in fact, social security, which is bringing the citizens to the fore, got the biggest chunk of the budget of, 28%. And after that, you now saw that security, okay, took the second largest percentage of 27%. However, okay, like I told you, if you now drill down a little bit, for a country that the Minister of Works had come out to say that will be requiring a minimum of 6 trillion to fix the roads, fix roads infrastructure, and you're not even including, power infrastructure, which are very elemental, two very critical factors to being able to create, this new infrastructure pathway that you need or is needed or required to be able to attract investment. 18% to infrastructure to me is not too good. And then you drill it down to where you have statistics now, rolling out that in 2024, a minimum of about 24 million Nigerians are going to be exposed, to poverty, extreme poverty. And then you are allocating 7% only to the agricultural sector is also not too good for me. And I have not seen where science and technology that is supposed to be in the center of all this. I have not seen where the mineral resources sector...
Some have argued that you need innovation, you need technology to drive the whole sector.
It's not an argument.
To get them going and to get a better efficiency.
It's a given. And you see, you find that the mineral subsector, the water resources, where you have, what you call latent potentials lying down there, okay, not being, supported as it should. Okay, so if you're going to be doing a lot of handouts with this 28% of the budget, you're going to be creating a lot of inspectional issues.
That is clearly in the supplementary budget of 2023. Yes. Possibly after the presentation, we'll get to see whether there will be a departure or whether I don't know the expectations. Mr. Usheu Aliu, you've heard from Dr. Okengo making an analysis, particularly on the allocations per sectors. Yes, it started from the 2023 main budget when the Tinubu administration came in. There had to be a supplementary budget to tend to correct or to tend to enhance the budget to possibly record much more quick wins and all of that. But before I come to your response, while you think of it, let's have the views of Nigerians on the street, where the Federal Executive Council on Monday proposed 27 trillion naira for the 2024 fiscal year for submission to the National Assembly. Nigerians who are very hopeful for the economic transformation also anticipate continuous January to December budget cycle. Moplang Dakok sampled opinions of some Nigerians to the proposed budget.
So many budgets have been coming from 2 trillion, from 4 trillion. No project have been executed, and rather than such all these budgets have been siphoning to individual pockets, and nothing have been done about the budgets. And it's in such ways we all believe that as a new government have just come, and which is our President Tinubu, and we are believing that at least with the kind of very high cost of livings and high cost of things in Nigeria, and if we can actually utilize that particular budget.
It's good now. Whatever I believe that we have ambassadors there. What they deem fit for the country, let them do it. If that the amount you mentioned is what is able to take care of the needs of Nigerians, no wahala. What we want is the best. At least we have new government. If that 1.something million naira is also budgeted for the poor people and for the multiple graduates in Nigeria, if that budget also cover that part on how they can accommodate these persons and give them job. As you can see, a lot of us are just roaming, looking for job, even looking for even empowerment so that we can be able to start doing something. We can't do anything.
I think the budget will be doable. Now that there's no more subsidy payment, I think if there's sincerity on the part of governors, they can deliver the budget. And my hope is that if we can also reduce on the loan we've been collecting from the international organizations, if we can reduce on it and look inward. My major issue is that let the refinery work.
In the present government now, I think they will, because the people that they put in the position right now, I think they are capable of using the money. I think the amount is much, but I believe they will make use of it very well. Because in the present economy in Nigeria now, with that kind of money, if they are not making use of it, I don't think that Nigeria is going to go forward.
Well, that's the view of Nigerians out there, and you hear that the voice of the people, the voice of God. So possibly God is talking to our leaders at this point. And like you heard Aliu Ushewu, from those reactions, Nigerians are concerned. Let's have minimize import, particularly of petroleum products. Energy is key in everything we do. Let the refineries work. Some say let's reduce the extent of borrowing. Though Dr. Okengo will tell you it's not bad borrowing, but what do we borrow for? What are your reactions to that?
My reaction goes to that directly to the performance of last year's budget, that is budget 2023, which is a budget of fiscal sustainability and transition. What I deduct from some of the people you interviewed is the fact that this administration, this budget has so much advantage better than previous budget. If you just take a look at budget 2023, transition was mentioned as a heading, and there is no transition cost now. So that transition cost should be added to a developmental cost. At the same time, also subsidy cost was not in the previous budget. However, the president has been telling Nigerians the savings that he has made out of the removal of subsidy. So we are expecting these funds to be back to put online for sectoral development. However, looking at the size of the budget, I'm optimistic that this administration has no reason not to perform for many reasons. Revenues has been consolidated. Import, like you rightly pointed out, of PMS, we are expecting a target of production in December. So when you take January as, for instance, the takeoff of 2024 budget to December, we are expecting to reduce pressure on our exchange rate by substituting the premium water spirit that is previously imported, produced in this country. It is going to save costs, and we're expecting also not only to save costs, but a reduction in pump price, because transport cost from far shores of Nigeria is now removed. So these are some of the things that I look into, but however, there is one fundamental challenge for this fiscal submission to the National Assembly at this critical time: inflation. If inflation at the takeoff stage is above 27%, this is what is causing the increase in general provisions of most of our appropriations. Because if you take a look, even if you just take a look through the window and check in 2020, when budget of recovery was introduced, inflation was 17.16%. So,
because that was understandably at that point because of the effect of COVID-19.
We are looking at the parameters.
If you look at it, then there was the supply disruptions.
Of course,
but yet you're making comparison. Okay, inflation, from your own analysis, inflation was a little bit checked then compared to now.
It was more stable, not checked. Even at that 17.16, it was high for the appropriation of that period, because
compared to the 27% we're having today.
Excellent. So we are expecting today to unveil the parameters or the assumptions and the target of the budget. Look at the target growth rate, for instance. If it is in last year, in 2023, if
2.9% was targeted, and what are we presently? And if, for instance, we target growth to be 6%, and we target in the next 3 years the size of our appropriation to be reflected in dollar, possibly $1 trillion economy, then there is a lot to be done to empower human capital development.
A quick one there.
Yeah.
What do you have to say about the 2.3 GDP growth recorded just recently?
That is what I'm trying to give you yes, a case study. So if we have 2.3, definitely is below IMF projection, is below the target of the budget aspiration. So if today, as parameters are going to be unveiled, we are going to see the target growth looking at the size of the budget, the content of the budget, and probably the commitment that is built in to sustain the budget. And probably that's why, at my own point, I am looking at the economic quagmire that we witnessed in 2023 as a result of removal of subsidy. You know, prices changes to a level beyond expectation, even of the policy makers. Nobody expected that by removal of the subsidy, inflation will rise to that level, because there are challenges that are domestic in nature, there are challenges that are exogenous in nature, and all this compounded the situation that we are. So the budget that today President Tinubu, I am happy to even witness the first budget to be presented by an accountant and to be received by an accountant. The speaker is an accountant, the president is an accountant. So we expect
adequate accounting.
And we expect even the vice president as a banker. So you see, it's a conglomeration, if I will put it that way, of special skill to deal with figures. But in dealing with these figures, we have to succeed in the target figures that are going to be presented today at the National Assembly.
Okay, Mr. Nia Kinsiju, talking about the expectations that Aliu here has reeled out, we have a supplementary budget where we had allocation for capital expenditure at 1.16 trillion. Then we are talking about a total expenditure 2.17 trillion, a recurrent expenditure 1.01 trillion. In all of this, yes, subsidy was removed, and there was that need to have something to cushion the effect of the hardship that was brought on Nigerians, as well as support the productive sector. But like Dr. Emeka had said earlier on, yes, talking about social safety, having a chunk of such a budget, is it just to ensure that families go by, or those who are in smaller businesses get to grow their businesses to fruition and possibly add to the production that is needed to reduce the inflation figure we're talking about that is dangling between 27%?
It's a whole complicated, sometimes confusing to some people, but I think it's really clear enough for me. There is a paradigm shift in Nigeria's economic environment. We are moving from what I call a feeding bottle economy to more or less a market-driven economy. And it depends on where we stand on the divide. Is it to allow the monetization of the feeding bottle, you know, that we have become so dependent on, or we stay back in that regime and continue to grumble? If we look at different economies globally, we have seen the performances of market operations. And of course, I mean open market driven economy. We have also seen managed economy, the impact of managed economy too. And we have seen that where a managed economy thrives, the possibility is that the governance at that level is more of an authoritarian dominant government system, you know. And to that extent, government can a priori, without any form of reasoning, intervene in the environment, you know. But going forward, for me, I think the monetization of what we have been dependent on it translates to, rather than have fuel subsidy going into different pockets and being shared at that level by Nigerians, we now see the realization of this subsidy calculated at $10 billion annually, being shared amongst Nigerians in form of infrastructure, in form of social intervention, as you have spoken,
as well as supporting the productive sector.
Good.
Okay, before we go deep into those analysis and with the figures allocated to some of these sectors, let's get to see what is the expectation from the oil and gas. He mentioned earlier on of the removal of subsidy and what that brings to the table, as well as supporting the economy in terms of revenue generation. And now expectations are high for the Ministry of Petroleum Resources for significant contribution to the realization of approved appropriation bill of 27.5 trillion for 2024, following its responsibility for the articulation, implementation, and regulation of policies in the oil and gas sector in the country. Key players say this can be achieved if Nigeria proactively takes advantage of the international cost of crude oil as well as high global energy demand. Lydia Sampson has that.
The bill, which has an exchange rate of 750 naira to a dollar and a crude oil benchmark of $77.9, is $4 more than earlier approved. With a targeted revenue for 2024 of 18 trillion naira, the oil and gas sector as a major foreign exchange earner and economic enabler is key to realizing these targets.
It will certainly boost the economy, because once NNPC is able to meet up her production quota, certainly the socio-economic activities will be at its peak, and that will impact positively on the citizenry of this country. So I want to align with the president's decision.
While applauding President Bola Tinubu for projections in the appropriation bill, some Nigerians are of the view that the ministry must ensure an enabling environment to improve the oil and gas value chain, driven by modern technology, industry best practices, stakeholders engagement, and innovations in alternative energy.
It should be a regulation that will make or break the strongholds of the people, so that no matter the smart move, every Nigerian can conveniently buy fuel at a cheaper rate.
If we really want to solve the problem of transportation, then the rail system must be looked into. There should be what they call a state of emergency on the rail system.
They urge the ministry to intensify efforts at diversifying the energy mix by developing hydrocarbon industries, including natural gas processing, refineries, and petrochemical industries through public-private partnerships to boost the realization of the 2024 budget. They are optimistic that as the ministry works towards meeting these expectations, it is crucial to maintain transparency and accountability in their operations so that the Nigerian oil and gas industry thrives and contributes significantly to the country's economic development. In Abuja, Lydia Sampson, NTA.
Well, oil and gas, that seems to be the mainstay of the economy. Yes, a lot have argued that there has been a departure from over-dependence on revenue from oil and gas to the non-oil sector. We saw at the point of recovery of our economy from COVID-19, the services sector, particularly the ICT, came in to contribute a large chunk of the economic growth. But whether we like it or not, the chunk of the revenue still come from oil and gas, and we just have tax and the kind of the reforms that are coming in might just be supportive to this main source. Mr. Akinsiju, we have heard earlier on issues of improved security in the Niger Delta region, which to a large extent might just contribute in the volume of crude to be produced and exported, and in other words, getting more revenues. From these expectations and from what is on ground and from the possible projections we are seeing from the supplementary budget and what we might possibly see I don't think there will be any difference. What are your expectations? How far can we go to ramp up revenue from that sector to support the implementation of this proposed budget?
I think the federal government is upbeat from what we are hearing. It's upbeat about possible increase in revenue earnings from the oil sector. And I think, well, it's a well-placed optimism. One, if you start looking at the figures that have been returned in the oil sector, oil and gas sector, so far there's an aggregate of 1.6 million barrels a day. That is inclusive of condensate. Crude oil in the other forms of categories, it's about 1.35 million barrels a day. And that's actually a quantum leap from 900,000, at the point in time. So to a large extent, I think with the trend as it is, the government should be able to achieve up to 1.75 million barrels. And of course, as you said, we are highly dependent on crude oil. And unfortunately, it's crude oil that would take us out of the economic doldrum, more or less, and the desire to diversify the economy. Because beyond the quantity, the volume of crude that we sell, we are still dependent on crude oil to activate other aspects of our economy. Even at the level of agriculture, at the level of manufacturing, at the level of service too. So the running the oil and gas sector efficiently is essential, to the growth and development of the Nigerian economy, as it were. I see an above 7 trillion prospect expectation from crude oil sales. That is different from the royalties. That is different from taxation, oil taxes, and all that. So by the time you calculate it, our economy is still about 70% crude oil dependent. So the running that aspect efficiently is important. And
sorry to hold your thoughts. You talked about royalties and taxes from oil. Yes, there has been reforms in that sector which brought in the PIA. Now the implementation of the PIA is another ball game altogether. Well, we've seen efforts towards ensuring that the provisions of the PIA are being followed, but how far we are going, it's something that we should get to have much more expectations. But even at that, we've had Emily Kabi recently talk about more reforms needed in that sector to ensure that the revenues that are supposed to be gotten from there are actually gotten, in the sense that if you look at NTA reports on oil and gas, you discover that a good number of companies are owing the federal government a whole lot of money running into trillions of naira. How do we get these monies into the federation account for the good of the Nigerian populace?
I think it's one of the pivots of the Fiscal and Tax Reform Committee, as it were. There have been a number of announcements and pronouncements at that level.
Including executive orders that have followed suit.
I mean, we all have seen how vessels that transport our crude, have not been paying taxes. And despite the fact that they were given 6 months notice, by now, chairman of the FIRS, at that time was special advisor, there was still a form of resistance, So it tells you how deep the system had been, how do I want to call it? I don't want to use the corruption in this sense, but let's say a lack of oversight of that aspect of the oil and gas industry. But essentially, a more efficient collection of taxes and royalties would enhance, of course, the quantum of fund or revenue coming from that sector. And if you also, yes, you mentioned PIA. If we are looking at more than 7 trillion expectation, 7 trillion expectation from the oil and gas sector in this cycle, 2024 budget cycle, and compared to the 2.43 trillion in 2023, that is a huge difference. Yes, it is easy to also, of course, bring the argument of the dollar-naira rates. Because when we look at it as a whole and we convert the the size, either at the level of the headline size or at the level of expectation from the crude oil, it will be as if, well, you have more than 100%, close to about 60% depreciation or devaluation of the naira now. But at the same time, for me, when you look at the difference between non-oil service, non-oil sector in 2023, that was stated at about 2.6 trillion, not too sure, about 2.5 trillion, and oil sector at 2.3 trillion naira. It does means at that time that we expected to earn more from the non-oil sector than the oil sector. It would appear now that we were not efficiently running the oil and gas sector at that time, and that there's an expectation of better and well-managed, efficiently managed oil sector, going forward. So it will be a good thing if we are able to realize the expected 7.3 trillion, about 7 trillion naira from the oil and gas sector. That's the most important thing. And of course, I just want to make this observation. Either at the level of the social intervention, which I think is important, because the whole paradigm shift in our economy impacts the very poor. And we have a large population of very poor people. And don't forget that our constitution admonishes government to be responsible for the welfare and security of Nigerians. Sure. The larger percentage of Nigerians, in truth and indeed, are poor. And if you are introducing this kind of reforms that have been introduced in the last 3-4 months or thereabouts, it is those average Nigerians that don't even understand what we are talking about. What is important to them is what's the manner and the quality of food that they have on their table. So the direct intervention for me is important. I think the general template of and the philosophy of 2024 budget is to actually drive a private sector collaboration and coordinated policy, economic policy with the federal government. Because if you are even targeting $1 trillion economy in the next 3 years, the kind of fund we have, revenue expectation, cannot get us there. It has to be the private sector, and I'm not talking of just private sector domestic. We have strong domestic investors, but we must have a strong drive at the level of the global FDIs, foreign direct investors and investments. So those are the two legs that can drive our vision into this larger economy. The important thing as it is now, and I think it is proper, even if we are dedicating 29% of the budget allocation to the Nigerian poor, so that anywhere in the world, even where capitalism thrives, there is a deliberate consideration for the very poor, so that you keep them calm at that level, and while you are able
keep
to
them
collaborate,
calm, reduce crime rates and all of that. Okay, Dr. Okengu, you've had the submissions of Mr. Akinsiju talking about the revenue sources, what is needed to fund this budget. Yes, we talked about the oil and gas as the main source of these revenues. I know you have advocated time without number, how to diversify, talking about solid minerals, how we can look into that sector to ramp up revenue for government spending. Do you still hold those thoughts, and how do you think that can play out in this budget proposal, and what concentration or what support or what attention should be given to the solid mineral sector to ensure that we maximize the potential in that sector? Yes, the minister, Dele Alake, has gone far to kind of revoke some licenses, some dormant licenses, and say, okay, we need to open up that sector to investment. What else do you think should be done to ensure that we maximize the potential in that?
Thank you so very much, Benny. Let me start by saying that our fixation on the oil and gas sector would pull us into further economic decadence. And there is no country of the world that has exited, okay? No oil producing country that hasn't exited oil and got into steel. Go and check the records. All across the UAE And it was a planned action. They didn't just run into it. They knew that their dependence on oil was going to be tying them intricately to, politics of international economic relations. In parentheses, the politics of the Seven Sisters. Okay, and anybody who'd gotten out, look at the UAE, the entire UAE. They had this planned action to move towards steel production. Now, at our local level here, the only sector of the Nigerian economy that had year on a sustainable real-time basis contributed to the GDP of Nigeria, and at the same time triggering industrialization and social inclusion, was the mining sector, which was contributing about 12%, on year basis between 1965 to about 1975, until we got the indigenous decree. And to this extent, you had, workshops in just one town, Jos, owned by a mining company that had over 70,000 workers. I didn't say a mine, their workshop, the African Integrated Team Mines. In their workshop, over 70,000. And you had cities like Enugu, sleepy on a hill, that became cosmopolitan just because of mineral resources. Ditto for Jos. So, if you're not looking at that level, and let's go to people that have now been very successful in catering for their poor. China. Now, at one time, 25, 26 years ago, there were 3 countries of the world that had populations of over 100 million, that had, a lot of their citizens under poverty or living in poverty. Those 3 countries were China, India, and Nigeria. Focusing on developing the skills of their people and exporting those skills and using them for productive activity, China, under 20 years, lifted 100 million Chinese people, not only out of poverty, but into the middle class. Ditto for India. Nigeria is the only country that has citizens or populations of over 100 million people that is doing handouts. And let me tell you what handout does to you. I mean, the last time those handouts where somebody did a calculation of what went to one of the states, it ended up becoming 1 tin of Derika rice to a family, after spending about 6 billion or 5 billion that were thrown to each state of Nigeria.
So are you saying, is that due to the population, or some of these funds were possibly diverted?
No, even
or in the general sense, it's not the way to go, like Mr. Kisiju has advocated. The population of the poor, it's not a mirage. According to him, it's a reality that has to be dealt with.
It is a paradox that you have poor people in Nigeria. Okay. It is a misnomer.
Living in riches.
It is not right. And I can tell you that poverty in Nigeria hadn't always been like this. When you had the mines running the economy, there was no village. I mean, you had corrugated roofs in villages in Jos in the 60s. You had electricity, in far-flung villages in Kaduna in the 60s. You had IPPs, powering mining operations in the 60s. In Nigeria, you had us becoming the biggest producers of tin ore, engaging people in mines. If you remember the 1927, mining riot in Enugu. So you had people that were being engaged. The point I'm trying to make is, as long as you are, Benny, doling out money because you want to help the poor, you are going to be frustrating them the more. Because nobody wants to be poor. Okay? Because that poor man that you're giving 5,000 naira made this beautiful cap that you're wearing. Okay, instead of giving him that 4,000, he would have been happier getting a machine. And I can tell you one of the states in Nigeria that had done that kind of program. If you go into any estate in Nigeria, you find out that any tailor you see in most of these, what do they call them, shopping malls, wear some spectacular cap. And this guy had empowered them by just not training, but giving them equipment. Now, if you spend 5 billion in a state, it would establish for you a minimum of at least 10, 15 skills acquisition centers that can train mechanics, that can even give people, on AI. If anybody has knowledge on AI, you don't need formal education, you know, to be able to do artificial intelligence, okay, or biotechnology, or nanotechnology. All right? You were talking about technology being at the heart. At the heart of technology is skill. So let's now answer your questions very directly. Nigeria's industrial growth was triggered by the mining sector. Okay? The Enugu, the Port Harcourt coal shipyard was built specifically. And if you go there, that equipment is still sitting there to be able to transport coal out of Nigeria, coming from the east, or Enugu to be precise. And against that, you know, volume of value, the rail lines were built. Ditto for most other parts of Nigeria that got electricity and et al. So for me, anytime you hear me talk about mining, I say to you, if you have a proper system, the mining sector in Nigeria that has located in over 540 locations in the country, known, probably the volumes not known, the values not determined, but they are there.
So your point is the mining sector is also the way to go, aside the oil.
The oil is not the way to go. I'm saying that the oil is not the way to go.
Kisiju, oil is the paramount, is the way to go. For you, there's an addendum to it.
There's no addendum.
For you, the solid minerals.
There's no addendum. The oil,
okay.
the oil
we are going to be
reconciling.
We are going to be reconciling that, following the advantages, because I agree with both of you. But before then, let's see much more reactions from stakeholders out there, where it is so far so good, but there is room for better information flow between the government and the governed, especially in disseminating the 8-point agenda of the renewed hope. And this is the reaction from a cross-section of Nigerians at this point.
What I think the Minister of Information and National Orientation should do now, the ministry itself should have a department that to pick advice from all these informational organizations, radio, TV, and people come or program, meaningful programs, suggesting from one economy, agriculture, people come and sit down, the technocrat give suggestions. And when they have a blueprint of what they want to do, they should communicate. That's why that ministry is their information and the orientation. They should spell it out so that even when people are going through hard times, they know that there's hope tomorrow, because they have seen the blueprint, they have seen where we are going to.
There's nobody who lacks political will. It's the refusal to use the will rightly. So they know what is right, but doing what is right is just what we lack. They travel out in other countries around the world where things work in advanced clan. But why are they not doing what they do there? They come here, they fail to do what they are supposed to do.
What I see, what I observe there is that in the first thing, I think, is discipline. Nigerians, we are not disciplined. They say don't break traffic. There is light. When light shows that, don't go. People goes. So I think it's still through you people that you can give information to get in touch with them that this is what public are complaining about.
Let there be no middle person, because I don't think the communication gap is terrible. They are not hearing what is happening at the grassroots. It's what they tell them they are hearing. They should come to the grassroots and listen to us as Nigerians.
In fact, the poor should even benefit in this government more, because the president himself said it during campaign that his government is going to circulate round. His government is going to touch round. So the information minister should look at the people that they are taking all those benefits. In fact, those poverty alleviation. Who are the people that are benefiting?
Like this minister now, what he can do, let him go round, visit from state to state, do the campaign. We are ready here. Many ministers have come and gone in that ministry. Either this name or the name he has been, it's still orientation. It's all about orientation. But he must do more. Go from place to place. Let him go to, even from this Abuja, let him start. Go to satellite and see what is happening.
By setting of program to all parts of the country, particularly in the youth and the women, because these are the two major people that are concentrating on politics. And we are praying for the government.
And also at this point, Nigerians are hopeful for a change in the renewed hope agenda, talking about especially with the humanitarian ministry and poverty alleviation, which they expect will touch more lives following the presentation of the 2024 appropriation bill.
The bad acts that are worrisome. You know, humanitarian and humanitarian ministries is a ministry that will have to touch up to the local levels and individual. When there's a huge budget for this ministry like that, they have to go around. But then we look at, I always say it, sometimes some people who are in the grassroots, they don't have the ones on top. Because when they are giving you something to go and give it to people, to serve your people, you are being given trust. But as this one is concerned now, we hope the new government will have a proper look and take care of, so that everybody will be praying that. So the budget is okay.
At least if they can, even reduce the numbers of the people who they are facing, the stress of the poverty and the so many challenges of Nigerians, please, they should try and do the right thing so that touch the people from the local area down to the city center, so that people will get a little bit favor from the federal government concerning this budget. But let her try her best to reduce the poverty for the masses of Nigeria.
And I pray that they should be able to live up to expectation. Because like some other ministries, this with infrastructures and other physical matters, this one deals with human beings. So their ministry is one of the most important ministries. Now, they are expected to touch the indigent people, poorest of the poor. And that is why that ministry was created.
Now back to the National Assembly, where the expectations, the ambience there is that of high expectations, as Mr. President is being expected. And information reaching us at this point is that the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria is already around the Assembly complex as the members, that is the combined house, talking about the Senate as well as House of Representatives, the Senate President, the Speaker of the Senate, members and senators are all expectant. And also in the National Assembly are stakeholders in the Nigerian project, talking about the movers and shakers of the economy. They are all there, been expecting. And for us here in the studio also, we're also expecting a breakdown of what is coming from the National Assembly, talking about what President Bola Ahmed Tinubu will be presenting to Nigerians. Like guests here in the studio have said, well, it's not just about expectations being high, but looking at the figures, looking at the parameters to actualization. It's one thing to plan, it's another thing to implement and have quick wins. Nigerians are not that very patient, if you permit me to say at this point. Like we've had Dr. Okengu, a lot of expectations from there, from the various sectors, and also you've also reeled out your expectations, particularly for the tech. I'm actually interested in that. We have a minister in the person of Tijani Bosun, who has been bringing in innovations, and we have seen him travel with Mr. President in those trips he had around the world to attract investment into Nigeria. We are looking at attracting high tech into Nigeria to boost what we already have in country. You agree with me that Nigerian startups are doing well, not just in country, but outside the country. But that framework that is needed, that support that is needed, that financial backing that is needed is what we're also expecting from this budget. What should we be seeing and how should it go? What's your suggestion?
You've left out the most important need of investment drive: human capital.
Yes, skills are key too.
Human capital. And when you're talking about human capital, you're talking about certified human capital. So there's human capital development and there's certified human capital development that can qualify for what they call OEM. OEMs are the original equipment manufacturers being able to leave the equipment in the hands of those people to be able to run it. So when you're bringing in this funding that is going to be coming, remember that a lot of them are not going to come in cash. A lot of them might come in technical support. A lot of them might come in technology transfer. And this is why you find a lot of companies will say to you, we are not even able to find the people to employ. And yet you have a lot of people who have graduated.
Is that a reality or a mirage? Yes, I know previous administrations have come up with a Local Content Act, which is in place. We've had executive orders to ensure, I think Executive Order 005, to ensure that as an investor coming to invest in your country, there is a percentage of local skill that should be employed in this. We've had arguments that we don't have such a skill force in Nigeria. Is that a reality?
It's a pandemic. It is worse than a reality. And I'm telling you what I know because I'm also part of the Presidential Order number 5 you're talking about. In fact, right now, one of the things that order is promoting is the National Wedding Policy. Okay, where it is not enough that you can be able to put acetylene and put this Nastat weld in a wedding stick, but you need to get that certification to be able to touch an equipment that is valued in trillions of dollars. Now, Benny, the second, which you missed out, is power. And power is not high-tech. With what they call ocean thermal converters, you can generate over 90,000 megawatts of electricity from our sea. The other you missed out is the establishment of desalination plants, okay, which is a major thing that Malaysia is using to supply water to all its neighbors from the same sea that divide all of them. So the point I'm trying to make is that if you are looking at investment pool, the first you need to do is to say to yourself, a lot of the things I know today as Benny Adams, did I learn it from School of Journalism or did I need to improve myself? And you don't need to answer this publicly. This is a personal question. And then how many of my classmates have been able to get employed the way I was? So first and foremost, if you do not look at your skill sets, then you're talking about a population of people, you know, who have this.
Okay, Dr. Okengu, I understand that Mr. President has just found his way into the chambers of the National Assembly. From the visuals we're seeing there, he's finding his way to the very front set where it's provided for him. And we have Rabiu Ali leading us through what is happening. Rabiu.
2024 appropriation bill presentation and the leadership of the National Assembly, both the Senate and the House of Representatives have received, the President on this memorable occasion. So far, let me quickly hand you over to the chamber for the proper proceedings. But before then, I would like to quickly chip in something. This is the first time the President is having an official engagement with the National Assembly. And for him to, appear before the National Assembly, you mean it's a serious business, and which is the presentation of the 2024 budget estimate. One pertinent thing that you should know that about is the fact that just last Monday, the Federal Executive Council, approved, the estimate of the 2024 budget of 27.5 trillion naira, which is higher than that of 2023. And this, symbolic relationship between the executive and the legislative arm of government, we hope it will continue. Looking at what transpired, during the inauguration of the 10th Senate, the screening of the cabinet of Mr. President and what have you. So we
Forces of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, Right Honorable Speaker, distinguished senators, and other colleagues, members of the National Assembly. The joint sitting of the National Assembly is hereby called to order. We will now proceed to take the prayers. For the Christian prayer, I call on distinguished Senator Igbishaba. And for the Muslim prayers, I call on Right Honorable Abdul Munini Jibril. You may now proceed.
This Sheikh Abdul Munini.
Let us pray. God, we thank you for today. We thank you for the enablement for us to be in this chamber this morning. We are here for the presentation of 2024 appropriation. We pray that you give us all the guide and all the wisdom to be able to carry today's activities. This we pray through Jesus Christ our Lord.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. In the name of God, most gracious, most merciful. Ya Allah, protect and guide our country. Ya Allah, protect and guide our President and our Vice President. Ya Allah, help them to achieve the good intentions and the development programs for the good of our country. Ya Allah, protect and guide the Senate President, the Speaker of the House of Representatives, all senators of the Federal Republic, all members of the House of Representatives, and all leaders across the country, from the top down to the point of councillors and supervisors in our local governments. O Allah, guide and protect our political parties, the APC, the PDP, the Labour Party, the SDP, the ADC, the YPP, and all other parties, but most especially the NNPP. آمن الرسول بما أنزل إليه من ربه والمؤمنون كلنا آمن بالله وملائكته ورسله لا يكلف الله نفسا إلا وسعها لا ما كسبت وعليها ما اكتسبت ربنا لا تؤاخذنا إن نسينا وأخطأنا ربنا ولا تحمل علينا إصرا كما حملته على الذين من قبلنا ربنا ولا تحملنا ما لا طاقة لنا به واعف عنا واغفر لنا وارحمنا أنت مولانا فانصرنا على القوم الكافرين قل اللهم مالك الملك تؤتي الملك من تشاء وتنزع الملك ممن تشاء وتعز من تشاء وتذل من تشاء بيدك خير إنك على كل شيء قدير لا إله إلا أنت سبحانك إني كنت من الظالمين ربنا آتينا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. Your Excellency, the President, Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, distinguished Senator Bola Ahmed Tinubu, GCFR, Your Excellency, the Vice President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, distinguished Senator Kashim Shettima, GCON, my dear brother, the Right Honorable Speaker, House of Representatives, Right Honorable Abbas Tajuddin, the Deputy Senate President, my brother Barao Jibrin, and of course the Deputy Speaker, Right Honorable Ben Kalu, my good brother, Your Excellencies, the Executive Governors present here with Mr. President, the principal officers of the Senate and the principal officers of the House of Representatives, very distinguished senators of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, and right honorable members of the House of Representatives of Nigeria. May I especially recognize in the President's entourage, Right Honorable Femi Gbajabiamila, the Chief of Staff to Mr. President, and also recognize in Mr. President's entourage, the Civil Senator George Akume, the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, members of the Federal Executive Council, the head of the Civil Service of the Federation, the Clerk of the National Assembly, members of the Diplomatic Corps. Let me recognize Engineer Ahmad Amshi, Chairman, National Assembly Service Commission, and his commissioners, Alhaji Sani Magaji, Tambua, area mentioned, the CNN,
Barrister Kamaru Ogulano, Deputy Clerk of the National Assembly, the Clerk of the Senate here present, and the Clerk of the House of Representatives, the Secretaries of the Directorates of the various arms of the National Assembly, the Head of the Security Agencies of the National Assembly, the Head of the Federal Agencies and parastatals, and of course, National Assembly Management Staff, invited guests, distinguished ladies and gentlemen of the press, and any, if any, oh my God, the national chairman of the greatest party in Africa. Permit me to apologize to the national chairman for the breach of protocol. I just turned and I saw his face. Your face cannot be hidden. His Excellency, the chairman of APC, Ganduje of Nigeria, the greatest in Africa. On behalf of the Right Honorable Speaker of the House of Representatives, the distinguished Deputy Senate President, the Right Honorable Deputy Speaker of the House of Representatives, the distinguished Senate Leader, the principal officers of both chambers, distinguished senators and honorable members of the House of Representatives, I, distinguished Senator Godswill Akpabio, with great honor and privilege, welcome an alumnus of this great National Assembly, our Reformation Ambassador to Aso Rock Villa, the esteemed President, Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, His Excellency Senator Bola Ahmed Tinubu, GCFR. To the giant sitting of the National Assembly for this crucial budget presentation session of the 2024 budget estimates. We collectively extend the same sentiments to our esteemed Vice President, His Excellency Kashim Shettima, GCON, the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, George Akume, the Chief of Staff to Mr. President, the Right Honorable Femi Gbajabiamila, and indeed all honorable members of the Cabinet of Mr. President, and of course, other members of Mr. President's entourage here present. It is said that no matter how high the eagle flies, its talons keep pointing to the earth. Mr. President, we know that no matter how high you rise in life, your heart will always point to this assembly. Mr. President, the United States of America has had democracy for about 247 years. But it was only when it marked its 185th anniversary, that it succeeded in producing two former senators, John F. Kennedy and Lyndon Johnson, as President and Vice President, respectively. But within 24 years of our democracy, we have achieved what took the United States of America 185 years to achieve. Not only do we have two former distinguished senators serving as President and Vice President of our dear country, we also have other alumni of this National Assembly in positions of public trust. The Secretary to the Government, George Akume, CON, the Chief of Staff to Mr. President, Right Honorable Femi Gbajabiamila, CFR, the former Speaker, and other representatives in Mr. President's Cabinet. And even for those appointments, we thank Mr. President. Mr. President, distinguished and honorable members, maintaining a cordial relationship with the executive arm has always been a requirement of the law. But now, given that our old boys run the executive, a good relationship with the executive is a must for all of us. Never have we had so many bridges and connection points between the two arms of government in Nigeria. So we will continue to work hand in hand and see eye to eye with the executive arm while ensuring that the principles of separation of powers as checks and balances, as enshrined in our Constitution, are observed in the overriding public interest. Mr. President, this is your maiden trip to these hallowed chambers to deliver your maiden budgetary estimates as President, Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. This is a significant milestone in our nation's journey towards progress and development. The presentation of the budgetary estimates sets the course for our nation's fiscal policies and priorities for the coming year. It is an opportunity for us to deliberate, scrutinize, and collaborate in order to ensure that the budget aligns with the needs, hopes, and aspirations of our people. Therefore, the National Assembly bears a great responsibility in the task of reviewing and approving the budget. We fully understand the weight of this responsibility and the impact our decisions will eventually have on the lives and on the welfare of the Nigerian people. It is our duty to ensure that the budget reflects the principles of transparency, accountability, and inclusiveness. Consequently, we will certainly conduct a very thorough and meticulous review of the estimates we are about to present to us. I would also like to express our gratitude to Mr. President for his tireless efforts in driving economic growth, promoting social welfare, and enhancing the security of our dear nation. Your patriotic efforts give us hope. Your antecedents comfort us, while your courage to take decisions motivate us. In our people-focused legislative agenda, we place a strong emphasis on national security, recognizing it as a cornerstone for progress. These challenges demand a united front. We remain steadfast in our determination to work collaboratively with the executive arm and the judiciary to address and overcome the security challenges confronting our dear nation. In this National Assembly, the death of any Nigerian equates a loss of a constituent to one of us. So whenever we lose anyone to insecurity, it is the sound of the ambulance passing by our window. We believe that insecurity can and must be stopped, and it must be stopped by all Nigerians running around and supporting government efforts. We also want to seize this opportunity to appreciate our armed forces for fighting for us and sometimes paying the supreme sacrifice for our security. And Mr. President, so far, you have taken the right steps, and calm is returning to our dear nation. We need to acknowledge the specific achievements of Mr. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's administration so far. Those who doubted him initially forgot his track record as the governor of Lagos State from 1999 to the year 2007. And Lagos, of course, is Nigeria's melting pot. They forgot his various economic reforms that helped attract investments and promoted economic growth, improved the ease of doing business, promoted business policies, and attracted foreign direct investment, not to mention today's robust internally generated revenue, which he grew as the governor of Lagos State from 600 million to today's 59 billion. Nigerians strongly believe that with the debt profile of the day today, that we are the man for the job to fix our economy. Already we have seen significant economic reforms, starting with the courageous removal of the petroleum subsidy, which has become an albatross to our nation. We have taken the right steps to unify the multiple foreign exchange markets. We have signed the 2023 electricity bill into an act of parliament, not to mention other good works that we have done. Mr. President, as the removal of the petroleum subsidy caused some discomfort in the nation, you responded with compassion and doled out palliatives to assuage the effects on the good people of Nigeria. we salute you. We, the elected representatives of the masses of this country, we have taken note of your responsiveness to governance. We have also taken note that these bold steps taken so far by this government have created some measures of economic discomfort to Nigerians, so we plead for continued support for the government to actualize the long-term benefits of these policies. The pain of today is like the pain of childbirth. When the result of the baby manifests, we will rejoice and will forget the pains of childbirth. However, we hope these budgetary estimates contain provisions to ameliorate the sufferings that the economic measures so far have exerted on our fellow citizens whom we represent. The 10th National Assembly, under our watch, is fully aligned with the President's dreams for our country. Our plans encompass comprehensive legislative actions that will contribute to nation building, economic growth, and social development. Through strategic reforms, we aim to create an enabling legal environment for sustainable progress and growth. Mr. President, distinguished senators and honorable members, the two chambers of this assembly are the two wings upon which not only the executive will soar, but our country will rise as well. There is some parallel unity between the two chambers. As you can see me and the honorable speaker seated together. This is the way we are. Very recently, the House of Representatives set forth its legislative agenda, and I was the chairman of that occasion. And soon the Senate will also dole out its own. Both chambers believe that we need to encourage the executive arm to unbundle some of the agencies in Nigeria for effectiveness, and even to merge some of them for government to reduce the weight of expenditure. There are also a lot of overlaps in some of the agencies. We are determined to look into those issues for greater effectiveness. We deem it necessary for our country to go back to agriculture as a way of stopping the overdependence on imported foods and even the overdependence on crude oil. A mono economy is putting all our eggs in one basket. It is a risk we have taken for too long, and we cannot continue to tempt providence. We also believe that education should be prioritized and something done to stop frequent closures of schools. If we do not checkmate the brain drain, the drain will numb our brains. This is why we must open the door of education. Because when you open the door of education, you close the door of the prisons. We also want to plead with the government to do all within its powers to reduce our high debt profile, which you inherited, which you did not cause. But then, the mark of a great leader is that he fixes the problems whenever they exist without complaint. Mr. President, as we embark on this budgetary presentation, let us reaffirm our commitment to responsible governance, fiscal prudence, and the efficient allocation of resources for the benefit of all Nigerians. Together with the spirit of unity and collaboration, we can overcome challenges and usher in an era of unprecedented development through reinvigorated revenue generation and fiscal prudence. We will continue to support the war against corruption and collaborate with anti-graft agencies to ensure that we do not continue to lose money that could be used to develop our nation. The 10th National Assembly will always stand with the people of Nigeria, protect their constitutional rights, and fight for their welfare. We are glad that you have these sentiments for our people, and you had codified this in the Renewed Hope agenda. This agenda resonates with us as an instrument the people endorsed by voting you into office. Our legislative agenda constellates around it, and we believe its faithful implementation will augur well for our nation and put Nigeria on a new growth trajectory. Mr. President, we reiterate and assure you of the National Assembly's readiness to support the efforts of your administration. Our agenda reflects our dedication to the Nigerian people and we look forward to achieving remarkable milestones for our great nation under your purposeful leadership. However, from whom much is given, much is expected. We will try to perform the oversight functions, and we expect that this assembly will ensure that taxpayers' money is used to benefit the taxpayer. In conclusion, we assure you that the proposals you have come to present to us will be diligently considered accordingly. We approach this moment with a sense of duty, unity, and purpose to ensure maximum attention to the review of the year 2023 budget performance and the consideration of the year 2024 budget estimates. We request Mr. President would mandate honorable ministers and heads of agencies to avoid foreign travels during this period of our engagements with them. That will prevent them from dishonoring the invitation of the chambers of the National Assembly. They will promptly appear before our committees to defend their budget estimates. We will not want to wait for them. Otherwise, we will lose time. And time is not on our hands. As we embark on the journey of reviewing the 2024 budget, let us remember that our actions today will shape the future of our dear nation. Together, let us work towards a budget that reflects the aspirations and dreams of every Nigerian citizen, particularly meeting your campaign promises. Once again, the National Assembly salutes you that on your first day of attending the Economic Community of West African States meeting in Guinea-Bissau, they saw that Nigeria is back on the national scene and elected you as the chairman of ECOWAS. Congratulations. So, distinguished colleagues and honorable members, let us at this point welcome the President, a man with track record, an alumnus of the National Assembly, to present his budget estimates. Can we give him a resounding applause? Thank Thank you very much. The Vice President, Senator Kashim Ibrahim Shettima, GCON. The Senate President, Distinguished Senator Godswill Akpabio, GCON. Thank you for your beautiful remark. And I'm glad I'm feeling at home, feeling welcome. The Right Honorable Speaker, Tajuddin Abbas, the APC National Chairman, His Excellency Abdullah Umar Ganduje, Executive Governors here present, my former colleagues and others, the Chief of Staff, distinguished leaders and members of the National Assembly, Secretary to the Government of the Federation, my landlord, or our landlord, distinguished Nyesom Wike, other government officials here present, gentlemen of the press, ladies and gentlemen, In furtherance of my sacred duty and obligations as the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, it is my honor to be here today to present my administration's 2024 budget proposal to this joint session of the 10th National Assembly. This moment is especially profound and significant to me because it is my first annual budget presentation to the National Assembly. Distinguished senators and honorable members of the National Assembly, I commend your swift consideration and passage of the 2023 Supplementary Appropriation Bill and the 2024 to 2026 Medium-Term Expenditure Framework and Fiscal Strategy paper. Your prompt action underscores your devotion to economic development and to the greater welfare of our people. It also highlights your desire to work in close collaboration with the executive branch. We do not serve ourselves. I appreciate you. We must always strive to work together to serve and benefit the people of our beloved country. Once again, I say thank you. Well done. I am here today confident that the National Assembly will continue to work closely with us to ensure that the deliberations on the 2024 budget are thorough but also concluded with reasonable dispatch. Our goal is for the Appropriation Act to come to effect on the 1st of January 2024. I trust you will do it. It is by now a matter of recorded history that my first physical intervention as president of this great nation was to end the fuel subsidy regime, which has proven to be so harmful to the overall health of our national economy. The second was to negotiate and subsequently present a supplementary budget to enable my government to fund the items needed to restore macroeconomic stability and mitigate the harsh impact of subsidy removal. The third was to secure a second supplementary budget, this time to enable us to keep our promises to promote national security, invest in infrastructure, and provide much needed support to the most vulnerable households in our society. In swearing in my cabinet and reflecting on the unique challenges facing us, I invited the ministers to imagine that we are attempting to draw water from a dry well. Today, I stand before you to present our budget of renewed hope, a budget which will go further than ever before in cementing macroeconomic stability, reducing the deficit, increasing capital spending, and allocation to reflect the 8 priority areas of this administration. The budget we now present constitutes a foundation upon which we shall erect the future of this great nation. Analyzing prevailing economic environment, economic condition remains challenging both abroad and at home. Despite lingering post-COVID supply and production bottlenecks, armed conflict in various parts of the world, and restrictive monetary policies in major economies, we expect global growth to hover around 3.0% in year 2024. This relative low rate has significant implications for our economy due to our current reliance on importation. The distinguished senators, honorable members, despite the global headwind, the Nigerian economy has proven resilient, maintaining moderate but positive growth over the past 12 months. Inflation has trended upward, yes, due to the weak global conditions. To contain this rising domestic prices, we will ensure effective coordination of fiscal and monetary policy measures and collaborate with subnational governments to address structural factors driving inflation in Nigeria. The budget proposal meets our goal of completing critical infrastructure projects, which will help address structural problems in the economy by lowering the cost of doing business for companies and the cost of living for average person. The Honorable Minister of Budget and Economic Planning will be providing full details of this proposal. Analyzing performance of the 2023 budget, distinguished senators and honorable members, an aggregate revenue of 11.045 trillion naira was projected to fund the 2023 budget of 24.82 trillion naira, with a deficit of about 6.1% of GDP. As of September 30th, the federal government's actual aggregate revenue inflow was 8.65 trillion naira, approximately 96% of the targeted 8.28 trillion naira. Despite the challenges, we continue to meet all our obligations. So the theme and priority of the 2024 budget, distinguished senators, honorable members, permit me to highlight key issues relating to the budget proposal for the next fiscal year. The 2024 appropriation has been themed Budget of Renewed Hope. The proposed budget seeks to achieve job-rich economic growth, macroeconomic stability, a better investment environment, enhanced human capital development, as well as poverty reduction and greater access to social security. Defense and internal security are recorded top priority. The internal security architecture will be overhauled to enhance law enforcement capabilities and safeguard lives, property, and investment across the country. Human capital is the most critical resource of national development. Accordingly, the budget prioritizes human development with particular attention to children, the foundation of our nation. To improve the effectiveness of our budget performance, government will focus on ensuring value for money, greater transparency and accountability. In this regard, we will work more closely with development partners and the private sector to address long-standing issues in education, A more sustainable model of funding tertiary education will be implemented, including the student loan scheme planned to become operational by January 2024. A stable macroeconomic environment is important to catalyze private investment and accelerate economic growth. We have and shall continue to implement business and investment-friendly measures to sustainable growth. We expect the economy to grow by a minimum of 3.76%, above the forecasted world average. Inflation is expected to moderate to 21.4% in 2024. In preparing the 2024 budget, our primary objective has been to sustain our robust foundation for sustainable economic development. A critical focus of this budget and the medium-term expenditure framework is Nigeria's commitment to greener future, emphasizing public-private partnership. We have strategically made provision to leverage private capital for big-ticket infrastructure projects in energy, transportation, and other sectors. This marks a critical step towards diversifying our energy mix, enhancing efficiency, and fostering the development of renewable energy sources. By allocating resources to support innovative and environmentally conscious initiatives, we aim to position Nigeria as a regional leader in the global movement towards cleaner and sustainable energy. As we approach COP28 Climate Summit, a pivotal moment for global climate action, I have directed relevant government agencies to diligently work towards securing substantial funding commitments that will bolster Nigeria's energy transition. It is imperative that we seize this opportunity to attract international partnership and investment that align with our national goals. I call upon the representatives to engage proactively to showcase the strides we have made in the quest to create an enabling environment for sustainable energy projects. Together, we will strive for Nigeria to emerge from COP28 with tangible commitments, reinforcing our dedication to a future where energy is not only a catalyst for development, but also a driver of our environmental stewardship. Distinguished members of the National Assembly, the revised 2024 to 2026 Medium-Term Expenditure Framework, MTEF, and Fiscal Strategy, FSP, set out the parameters for the 2024 budget after a careful review of development in the world oil market and domestic conditions. We have adopted a conservative oil price benchmark of $77.96 per barrel and daily oil production estimate of 1.78 million barrels per day. We have also adopted a Naira to US dollar exchange rate of 7.50 per US dollar for 2024. Accordingly, an aggregate expenditure of 27.5 trillion naira is proposed for the federal government in 2024, of which the non-debt recurrent expenditure is 9.92 trillion naira, while debt service is projected downward to be 8.25 trillion naira, and capital expenditure is 8.7 trillion naira. Nigeria remains committed to meeting its debt obligations. Projected debt service is 45% of the expected total revenue. The budget deficit is projected at 9.18 trillion naira in 2024, or 3.88% of GDP. This is lower than the 13.7 trillion naira deficit recorded in year 2023, which represents 6.11% of GDP. The deficit will be financed by new borrowings totaling 7.83 trillion naira. Strategically, 298 billion naira from privatization proceeds and 1.05 trillion naira drawdown on multilateral and bilateral loans secured for specific projects. Our government remains committed to broad-based and shared economic prosperity. We are reviewing social investment programs to enhance their implementation and effectiveness. In particular, the National Social Safety Net project will be expanded to provide targeted cash transfer to poor and vulnerable households. In addition, effort will be made to graduate existing beneficiaries towards productive activities and employment. We are currently reviewing our tax and fiscal policies. Our target is to increase the ratio of revenue to GDP from less than 10% currently to 18% within the term of this administration. Government will make effort to further contain financial leakages through effective implementation of key financial management reforms. Distinguished senators, honorable members, in view of the limited resources available through the federal budget, we are also exploring public-private partnership, the arrangement to finance critical infrastructure. We therefore invite the private sector to partner with us to ensure that our physical trade and monetary policy, as well as our developmental programs and projects, succeed in unlocking the latent potential of our people and other natural endowments, in line with our national aspirations. Distinguished senators and honorable members, this budget presentation will be incomplete without commending the patriotic resolve of the 10th National Assembly to collaborate with the executive on our mission to renew hope and deliver on our promises to the Nigerian people. I assure you of the strong commitment of the executive to sustain and deepen the relationship with National Assembly. As you continue to consider the 2024 budget estimate, we trust that the legislative review process will be conducted with a view to sustaining our desired return to a predictable January to December fiscal year. I have no doubt that will be guided by the interests of all Nigerians. We must ensure that only projects and programs that, with equitable benefits are allowed into the 2024 budget. Additionally, only projects and programs which are in line with the sectorial mandates of MDAs and which are capable of realizing the vision of our government should be included in the budget. As a government, we are committed to improving the lives of our people and delivering on our promises to them. The 2024 budget has the potential to boost performance, promote the development of macro, micro, and small and medium-sized enterprises, enhance security and public safety, and improve general living conditions of our people. We have not considered great opportunity coming from mineral, solid mineral, and other areas. But I promise you that the recovery is here. It is in your hands to thoroughly look into the situation. Being sympathetic with the ordinary people out there who put their confidence on us and rest their hope with your and my family. In closing, I am confident that this budgetary allocation and directives will set Nigeria on transformative path towards a sustainable and resilient energy future, fostering growth economically, job creation, and environmental preservation. It is with great pleasure, therefore, that I will lay before you this distinguished joint section of the National Assembly, the 2024 budget proposal of the federal government of Nigeria. The title is Renew Hope Budget. I thank you most sincerely for your attention. May we collectively chart the course towards a brighter and cleaner future for our great nation. May God bless the Federal Republic of Nigeria, and God bless you all. Thank you very much.
Well, the President just presented the 2024 budget Third, renewed hope budget, 27.5 trillion naira budget. Mr. President has actually explained further that the 2024 budget will ensure effective coordination of fiscal and monetary policy, where the President has always stressed on the desire of his government to ensure that these two economic policies are given adequate attention and professional touch. The President also explains that the 2024 budget will create a better business environment, reduce poverty, and he also explained that there's priority on national security. In fact, the President said there will be overhaul of the security architecture. The President has also explained that this budget is very critical for him, being the first as President, Federal Republic of Nigeria, because he said most of the promises he made to Nigerians while he was campaigning to become president are all anchored and will be realized through the implementation of this budget. Now, the 2024 appropriation bill has been laid before the joint session of the National Assembly, and now the budget, it's now in the confine of the legislature. Now it's now deemed that the budget, the appropriation bill has been read for the first time. That is, it has now passed first reading. And we expect that after today, the next time they will sit.
It is now my privilege and honor to invite my brother, the Right Honorable Speaker of the House of Representatives, to now move a vote of thanks.
The President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, Senator Bola Ahmed Tinubu, GCFR, the Vice President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, GCON, Senator Kashim Shettima, the President of the Senate, my good brother, Senator Gosul Akpabio, the Deputy Senate President, Senator Barrow, the Deputy Speaker, Raul Benjamin Okazikalu, the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Senator George Akune, the Chief of Staff to the President, Right Honorable Femi Bajabiamila, the leadership of the Senate and the House of Representatives, the Chairman of APC, Governor Abdullahi Ganduje, the entire cabinet of Mr. President here present, executive governors here present, other government officials here present, the entire management and staff of the National Assembly here present, members of the press, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the National Assembly, I express sincere gratitude to Mr. President for taking time out of the grueling demands of his office to undertake a time-honored democratic tradition of presenting and laying the budget estimates for the year 2024. Your presence in this hallowed chamber, Your Excellency, is indeed historic, not only because it represents your first address to the joint session of the National Assembly as the 16th President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, but also because it represents a homecoming for you. By undertaking this important constitutional responsibility, you have continued what you started at your inauguration on 29th May 2023. All your actions since then have been bold, decisive, and purposeful. They indicate your resolve to make decisions that may be hard but necessary to remedy past errors and put Nigeria on the path of economic recovery, security, and development. We commend you for your courageous and determined leadership. Your Excellency, sir, your administration's renewed hope agenda is the philosophical foundation of the legislative agenda of the 10th House of Representatives. We have developed a detailed roadmap to ensure that the legislature supports, promotes, and oversees the strategic objectives of this government. A major thematic area of our agenda is economic growth and development. We recognize the role that Parliament plays in shaping the economic trajectory and the role that we play in influencing economic development. Towards this end, the National Assembly will support the government policies and programs targeted at alleviating poverty, economic restructuring and diversification, as well as social sector reform and development. For the first time in our legislative history, the 10th House of Representatives created monitoring and evaluation committees to ensure effective implementation of the budget and Mr. President's 8-point agenda, among others. I'm happy to report to Mr. President that the legislative agenda was on 4th November 2023 unveiled to the Nigerian public through the distinguished chairmanship of the Senate President, distinguished Senate President Gosul Akpabio. Mr. President, it is a well-known fact that millions of our constituents are living through incredibly difficult times. For this reason, they also look to your own administration to provide quick and sustainable solutions. The antecedents of the President and your track record in governance inspire a lot of people and hope in Nigerians. Mr. President, it is for this reason that we cannot afford to fail Nigerians. If anyone can change the road and chart a new course for Nigeria, it is emphatically you. I have no doubt whatsoever that you can measure up to the expectations of Nigeria through your visionary leadership and commitment to the National Assembly. Accordingly, the budget laid before us today should not be seen as a mere financial document, but a reflection of our collective resolve to address the most critical needs of our long-suffering citizens. In order to promote economic growth and development, the 2024 budget should prioritize social welfare programs to help reduce poverty and inequality. Equally important is job creation and youth empowerment in view of the large and ever-growing youth population. Failure to do this means failure to invest in our future. This budget must also prioritize investment in education and healthcare, which is critical to human capital development and a more productive workforce. Infrastructure development is another critical area of importance, which is crucial for economic growth. The biggest challenge, however, is balancing these priorities within the constraints of available resources. In view of this, and the related challenge of high level of public debt, the National Assembly will ensure that the 2024 budget includes concrete strategies for sustainable debt management, including measures to increase revenue and control expenditure. Specifically, the focus should be on raising more revenue through tax reform, fiscal reform, subsidy reform, foreign exchange convergence, and centralized revenue collection. In our recent engagement with NTAs on the MTEF, we emphasize the need for revenue-generating agencies to double their targets to meet the 18 trillion revenue projected in the budget. Mr. President, the effectiveness and legitimacy of fiscal policies depend to a very large extent on public support. As the People's House, and in line with our legislative agenda, the House of Representatives will convene the first national citizens budget town hall to harness public input and opinion on this budget. We are convinced that this will increase transparency and accountability, improve policy making, and increase trust in government. Public participation in the budgetary process has been shown to improve resource allocation and service delivery, as well as a more stable and robust economy. By seeking inputs from citizens, we aim to understand their local needs and preferences better and allocate resources more effectively. Your Excellency, going forward, will also work to institutionalize pre-budget engagements with the executive to further improve and hasten the budget process. The House has already commenced interface with NTAs through the sectoral debates to understand the challenges facing government agencies and identified areas for legislative interventions. All of these efforts are geared towards ensuring that we provide the necessary legislative support to your administration's renewed hope agenda. Your Excellency, I cannot conclude my remarks without highlighting some of the perennial problems that have hampered the budget process in Nigeria. These are well known to Mr. President, who is an experienced ex-legislator. Although the government budget is an important tool for economic management and promoting growth and development, it has generally not met the expectation of improved service delivery and development. This has largely been due to challenges relating to budget enactment, budget implementation, and budget oversight. The well-known gaps in the various stages of the budget process underscore the need for budget reforms, including altering relevant sections of the Constitution and existing laws to strengthen the budget process and transform our budget into an authentic tool for development. For this reason, I propose enacting a Budget Act to strengthen the budget process and promote development outcomes. This is a well-established practice in democracies across the world. Mr. President, let me, on behalf of my colleagues in the National Assembly, assure you that we will give this bill the utmost priority it deserves. While we give it accelerated consideration, we will diligently scrutinize it alongside Nigerians to ensure that when it is passed, it will be a budget that best addresses the most critical needs of our people. Accordingly, we seek the cooperation of all heads of MDAs, especially during budget defense by committees. We shall thoroughly examine various aspects of the budget proposals, including economic feasibility, allocation and utilization of funds, and sustainability of proposed fiscal policies. This is essential for maintaining checks and balances and ensuring that government spending aligns with national priorities and is conducted transparently and efficiently. Therefore, I urge all stakeholders to approach the deliberations on this budget with a sense of purpose and commitment to national development. Distinguished senators, honorable members of the People's House, we must proceed with the huge task ahead. The next couple of weeks will be tough and demanding for us, but I do not doubt our capacity to effectively and speedily discharge our constitutional mandate. We must ensure that the budget, when finally passed, meets the expectation of the people we represent. We must equally follow through the implementation processes through our various oversight engagements. Mr. President, let me conclude by a short vote of thanks. My short vote of thanks by once again thanking you for undertaking this important exercise of budget presentation. To the National Assembly, I wish to categorically express the assurances of the 10th Assembly to work with you to ensure that you succeed and also Nigeria succeeds. Thank you, and may God continue to bless the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
vote of thanks by Speaker Tajuddin Abbas, who on behalf of the National Assembly expressed gratitude to Mr. President for what he described as a show of political will. The Speaker also reiterated what the President of the Senate earlier said, that the National Assembly will give the budget adequate attention.
Duly observed. In line with our practice, we will now call on the Deputy Speaker and the Deputy Senate President immediately after this National Assembly to lead Mr. President and his esteemed delegation out while the joint session will continue. The national anthem.
Mr. President has just performed one of the most critical roles of the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria as contained in Section 81, subsection 1 of the 1999 Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria as amended, which provides that the President shall cause to be prepared and laid before each House of the National Assembly at any time in each financial year estimates of the revenues and expenditure of the Federation for the next financial year. At this point in time, the budget is now before the National Assembly. And this is another significant aspect of the budget process. Well, the first aspect is preparations of the budget done by the executive. The budget is presented to the Parliament for enactment. Now, the National Assembly will have to slate a date for the consideration, which will now be second reading. When the President presents the budget before the Parliament, it deemed to have been read for the first time. And then the next time, the Parliament will bring the bill before the Chamber, will be second reading. And after that, the National Assembly will now constitute its standing committees. All the various standing committees will now become committees for the appropriations. And then ministers, ministries, departments, and agencies of government will now be invited to defend the budgets of the various ministries, departments, and agencies. And well, when the President of the Senate, Godswill Akpabio, was making his welcome speech, he urged the President to direct that all ministers and heads of agencies and parastatals suspend all foreign trips to ensure that they come to the National Assembly to defend their budgets. Well, as it stands, as soon as the President leaves, the joint session will continue. This is, like I did say earlier, a very significant session in Parliament when the President visits, and especially this time that is issue of presenting the national budget. Now, every Parliament has its own peculiarity. For instance, in Nigeria, just like the United States, the Nigerian Parliament has the power, has great powers on the budget process. Now, as the President has led this estimates of 27.5 trillion, the Nigerian Parliament has the constitutional right to increase or decrease? Well, there are three major types of parliament across the world. We have the budget writing legislature, which Nigeria and the United States belong to. We have budget approving legislature, that's for India and UK and some other countries. And we have budget influencing legislature. For budget writing legislature, which Nigeria belongs to, that parliament have the right to increase or decrease estimate presented by the chief executive. And that is where the issue of the power of the purse comes in. The parliament has the right to appropriate. So now, the 2024 budget has left the confines of the executive. It's now in the National Assembly. And the next stage will be the scrutiny of the money bill. Now, as soon as the president leaves, members of the National Assembly, that is the Senate and House of Representatives, will still remain in the chamber to continue with the budget process. And then Speaker Abbas did make a very salient recommendation. He said there's need for reforms of Nigerian budget system. Yes, he said it's very important at this point in time. There are some issues, some areas that need correction, because he said there are some challenges in the enactment, implementation and audit of budget. Because now that the president has presented the budget, the next process will be enactment. After that, it goes back to the executive for implementation, and then it's come back to the National Assembly for audit. That is where oversight, parliamentary oversight comes in. And so it's a whole gamut of exercise that involves both the executive and the legislature. And like the president did say, the president also commended the 10th National Assembly for the show of zeal to cooperate with the executive for national development. Now, there are certain, in the budget process like this, there's always need for constant engagement, which the president has assured the National Assembly that will continue in the interests of the nation. Now we expect that part of this budget will also see to the completion of some projects that were not completed in the 2023 budget. Now Mr. President has left the chamber. President of the Senate, Godswill Akpabio, Speaker Tajuddin Abbas are now all seated with members of both chambers, senators and members of the House of Representatives, seated back in order to conclude the joint session. Now, this budget, we expect that there will be quite tremendous impact on micro and macroeconomic development, as the president did say. We did remember that the president had earlier established a presidential Fiscal Policy and Tax Reform Committee headed by Taiwo Oyedele. We expect that they will have huge impact on the budget. Now, I will hand over to my colleague at the lobby, Rabiu, who want to speak to some of the people who accompany Mr. President.
I'm not home.
We are not ready.
You are prepared here.
Do we know we're ready?
Our colleague there at the lobby of the National Assembly, Rabiu Ali, lost contact with our technical crew here. So actually he was standing by to speak to some of the people who accompanied Mr. President. But, well, one or two technical hitches couldn't allow him to forge ahead. Now, I think the presiding officers are now ready to continue with the joint session.